easier for me to talk about this topic, to be honest. Okay, so some of the companies that I work for, I think some of the logos might be familiar to some of you. If you don't care about corporates and capitalism, then you won't know any of them. Again, I think what I'm trying to tell you here is that we are represented by the organizations that we work for and volunteer for, but that does not mean that we inform who we are. I think it's very important to know that despite all the experience that I have, all of the things that have led me to sit in front of you today and be an authority that Jeffrey can invite to talk about inclusivity, it doesn't mean we can't talk about inclusivity as it is. Next slide. After 10 years working in HR, I think a lot of people would say inclusivity is easy to do because as a professional in this industry, in fact, in startups, people want to cut edge, right? So when people talk about hiring the best to do the best work, you think of your Googles, your Facebooks, your Meta, and you're like, these people have all the money in the world, right? They can make things happen. But what's actually happening right now is the line of work that I'm in, diversity, equality, and inclusion, or equity, sorry, in this situation, have failed, right? People are saying, where's the sense of dignity? When we come to work, are we respected, right? Is there a sense of justice in what we are doing? When we put so much in, what do we get out of it? Are we being treated as people? When we are wrong, does someone do something for us to make it right? Right? That doesn't happen in the workplace, I can assure you. Right? No matter how much money they're giving you, there will be a situation where someone will treat you nicely. There's no justice in that. Similarly, I found this while I was researching my slides for Jeffrey. And it's very true that actually, in Singapore and our country, not just globally, there is a huge challenge when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? If we go through the proper definition of equity, equity is actually about ensuring that everyone has the same. So we're talking about the same amount of money, the same amount of food, the same access to jobs, the same salaries. That's something that is very hard for us to do in Singapore. There are a lot of challenges, I think even some of us youth are working very hard to try to equalize. We're finding it very difficult because even personally, we can't justify it. We have this thinking sometimes like, I work harder than this other person. How come they are allowed to earn the same money? Right? Why do I have to give you some of what I have when I work harder to earn it, when I have the money to afford it, but you don't? I think that's something that's very sad. But each to his or her own when it comes to trying to find out what it is. But for today's discussion, I don't really want to talk about equity because I think that's not what inclusivity is about. Inclusivity is really about taking each individual person and finding out a little bit about them, just like I told you a little bit about myself, and trying to see how you can help each other. I think in the context of ArtsXplore, it's really about understanding that each of us has something very unique to bring to the table, right? And also considering what that means for each individual person. So, in telling you a little bit about myself, some people might feel like, oh, these are very normal things to tell people. But it's quite personal. I'm a very private person. I don't necessarily like to tell people that, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. There's a lot of failure in the corporate world, in industry, when it comes to DEI, right? That's a problem. We've corporatized inclusivity. We've decided that this is something that is formulaic. We can pay professionals to get it done. Do you all agree that's true? To some extent, who believes it's true? You can pay for inclusivity. Show of hands. Okay, everyone here is very principled and liberal. Okay. I like that. Next slide. Okay. A quote that I found from someone who's very corporate. Okay, this lady works for one of the big multinational companies. So Christiane Garofalo says that diversity is a fact, right? So it's something we can engineer. Inclusion is a behavior. It's when we hold out our hand and say, please come and join us, right? We would like to hear what you say. We believe you have something to bring to the table. That's inclusion, is the behavior. But belonging is the emotional outcome that people want in their organization. So, in doing the work that I've done, in interacting with people from all walks of life in Singapore, with a very global focus in mind as well, I think ultimately what inclusivity is about is this concept of belonging. Okay? In all the different places where we bring ourselves, we will want to be the true, authentic version of ourselves. It's the part of myself where I can share, even though I don't know any of you here except for Jeffrey and Ansley that I met just now. I can share with you that this is me, right? this is the person that I am. Certain things that I trust you to keep for me, right? You're not going to go telling everybody like, oh, Tasha came to talk today and she's blah, 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 and she's all. But it's a sense of belonging, right? I'm on the board of directors here at SCAPE. SCAPE is a place for me that's almost like a second home. I love being here. Every time I come, I have a great time. There are people in SCAPE and in NCCY that I love to work with. Every time they call me, they'll be like, Jeffrey wants you to talk. I'm like, okay, don't know who Jeffrey is, I'll just come. But I feel like I belong here. And I think it's something very important that I want to share with you all, because regardless of who I'm coming to see, who I'm working with, this is a place, and these are people that I really identify with and I feel like they accept me, right? So regardless of being a minority, regardless of identifying myself as marginalized in this community, I still feel like I belong, right? The emotional outcome that I get from participating even in this short talk and discussion that we might have gives me that sense of belonging. So that's how I work, right? Whether I do my volunteering, my leadership, my corporate work, if I feel a sense of belonging, it's all good, right? There will be challenges from diversity. You might be brought in as a diversity hire. In this context of ArtsXplore, you might feel like your diversity is being tokenized. I don't know if you know what tokenized means, but it's basically being used as, oh look, this is something special. We are supporting you because you're different from everybody else. That's being tokenized, right? Purely for face value. Being tolerated because you're a minority and you need to have diversity. Inclusion is speaking to it, right? Behaviors are a bit harder to do, takes a bit more effort, but maybe belonging is what you want. Because belonging takes it away from the people watching you, interacting with you, and puts it into yourself. I think that's really important. Thank you. So, I really wanted to come here today and give you a bit more context on what inclusivity means and what it looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. So if there's anything that you take away from today, it could be this, right? So I prepared a bunch of questions. It will take you a while to read through, but don't worry, we'll talk through it a little bit. In the years that I spent doing leadership in nonprofits, doing plenty of discussions, whether it's about problems or whether it's looking for solutions, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I'm going to exclude equity because this is not the problem that we're trying to solve today, it's quite in order to talk about inclusivity, we try and establish inclusion. What are we saying? And we talk about belonging, which is how do we create an emotional outcome for the people that we work with, right? I think we can agree it's two very important things that you need in your products at the end of ArtsXplore, correct? Everyone agree? Okay. I'll speak a little bit about inclusion first, because it's very easy to understand, I think, in the context of yourself. So, it's what you're doing, the topic at hand, the product you're trying to achieve. Is this something you know about, personally, experienced firsthand, right? I think some of you might come up with your ideas or your prototypes based on that. It's something that you care deeply about. It's something that you want to share with others in terms of an experience. Do you need to seek out others? Yes, maybe. I think when it comes to talking about inclusivity, it's always important to think about, am I having an experience that is very similar to what other people are doing, right? So, let's talk about getting hurt based on an argument. Okay? So let's say I'm having an argument and I want to depict it in interpretive dance since we're in arts. Okay, the argument that you're having, is this an argument that lots of people have? Right? So let's say this argument that I want to have an interpretive dance about is an argument with a mom. Right? Do a lot of people have fights with their mom? Yeah? How many people here have fights with their mom? Okay, enough. Right? So just struggle up, like, okay, enough, I can do an interpretive dance for my mom. But if I was in a room with a bunch of orphans, sorry to say it, do you think they will identify with it? Completely the wrong place and time, right? But unfortunately, there are some people with a complete lack of empathy and will not be able to understand the context, right? So that's important. It's a very lousy example, but it's also, it gives you an idea of how hurtful it can be not to be included, right? Professional organization input, I think you all have the benefit of support from all the different partners involved in ArtsXplore to get that input that you need. But sometimes if you want to reach out a little bit further, expand your reach and go to charities, go to other art organizations or practitioners that might be able to help you out, that's something that you can look at. I won't touch too much on that. The last one ties into do I design, execute, and own outcomes, or is this done by others while credit goes to me? I think this is really important. As an arts practitioner, as someone who works in technology, we deal a lot in something called IP, intellectual property, right? How many of you have felt as though someone took credit for your IP? Okay, a couple of hints. I think feeling as though that happens to you or happened to you kills your belonging, right? If you're in a place where someone takes your secret and shares it with the world, that kills belonging. Similarly, something that you create, the fruit of your labor, same thing. Yeah? So it's very important, especially in non-profits I found, that you don't take credit for other people's labor. At the same time, when you design, when you lead, when you orchestrate, when you execute, when you project manage, right? You might feel as though you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself, that others are involved directly in contributing to, right? Or even, what you start with at the beginning of ArtsXplore may not be what you end up with, right? And that's due to a lot of people coming together to make it happen. At what point do you feel comfortable knowing that you design, execute, and own everything? I can't tell you, but there's a spectrum, right? And when you get to that very uncomfortable point where you're saying things like, this is my baby, or, I'm the one who knows how to do things. I feel, I'm doing everything. Then that might be where it becomes quite emotional for you. So is the belonging there? Because it ties in. Yes, the belonging is there. But is it positive belonging or negative belonging? Negative, right? It feels like you're being pushed. The emotional outcome is not a good one. It doesn't feel like cooperation. It doesn't feel as though you're part of something, right? It feels like the something is trying to take your baby out. Does that make sense? Yeah? I'm speaking in generalizations, but I think it's very important to talk about that. That brings us over into belonging. But before I do that, it's okay to take a picture of this, by the way. This isn't proprietary. I just made it up for you. So if you want to spend a bit more time on this, so please feel free. Coming from that question, am I a part of the solution and the problem? Right? So in order to figure out whether you're having a positive or a negative reaction, it's very important to look at whether you're a part of the solution. In trying to depict topics with ArtsXplore, are you doing something that adds to the vibrancy of what you're trying to portray? Or is it taking something away? Does it make people feel bad? Does it make them feel recognized, seen? Or something else, positive or negative reaction? That's really important. Do you have a say in how to design, perform, and depict better? With some of the larger groups here, I think it's really important to ask that question, and it might feel like you're just trying to go through the motions, but every once in a while just stop and ask everyone, do you feel like you're part of this? Do you have any input? How can we design this better? Am I being heard? Same thing as well. Is this a democracy or is it dictatorship, right? Of course, someone must always be the leader, but your role is to ensure that everyone has a say. And finally, are you recognized for your efforts and leadership? If you lead and you own, you should be given the credit. But at the same time, having a real good sense of belonging is also about ensuring that even if you're not the leader, you feel like you do something that's worthwhile. Worth it for everyone, but also worthwhile for yourself. You feel proud and appreciated. I think it comes down to it at the end of the day. If you don't feel good being here, then maybe it's not right. I say that to everyone who volunteers in my non-profits as well. Yeah? Anybody want to take a picture of this before I move on to the next slide? We can come back to it later if we need to, because we need the slides as well. Okay, so this is the problem of equity, right? I talked about it a bit earlier as well. That it's not something that we can solve together. Yeah? So if you want to have a chat about it later, I'll be happy to. But I want to move on to the last bit because I've got the time limit for Jeffrey already. Last slide. So I just wanted to end on this note, which is a little shape sorter. You all played this thing before? There's a little square block. Okay, so this thing is designed for open-ended play. I have a baby, which is why I'm very familiar with this stuff. And you'll find that when you have different shapes and you slot the toys in, that the idea is that only certain shapes will go into the slots that they are designed for, right? But do you all find that sometimes you can put a square into a rectangle, right? You can slide the weird angled shape into a little star shape, right? Certain things go to the slots that they're not meant for. The great thing about belonging is that when you're doing things right and you're ensuring that everyone has a positive emotional outcome, based on what you're doing. Sometimes you'll attract people who are not there for you, right? So if you have a message that is inviting, that is positive, that is more about discovering and I guess understanding each other or understanding a topic that's not accessible, and you succeed in being accessible and allowing others to come and join you on your journey, you're going to end up with something like a shape sorter. Open-ended, right? Welcoming, at the same time very specific to the topic that you're trying to discuss, the prototype that you're trying to achieve. Does that make sense? I see some nodding yes. Okay. Yeah, so if you're a more tactile person, maybe you want to get one of these and figure out what I'm talking about, but this is what I wanted to end on today. The questions, please, you're welcome to copy them down and refer to them as much as you need to. I hope, inclusivity makes a bit more sense to you today.